Hey everybody, welcome back to Jeff Bowl Central. I thought I'd do a retro roundup gaming segment for you guys. I haven't done one of these in quite a while. Basically, it's a retro roundup, man. Let's take an old retro video game, and I tell you if it still holds up, if you should play it ever, if you should leave it alone, if you should never think about it ever again. And the reason Indiana Jones here pops up is because they're making a new indie game for the current generation, the new stuff. And we haven't seen what it looks like, but you know what? It could very easily be a modern or more current version of this little gem. This is Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. And this was on PlayStation 2. This was on the original Xbox. This was on PC. So whoever you are, you have a chance to play it, or you did at that time. And it's made by LucasArts, and it's one of the last great games that LucasArts made before falling apart, and then the Disney buyout and everything. And Disney is struggling right now figuring out how to use the Lucasfilm license exactly as the fans would have it, because EA gave us the Battlefront games, it gave us the Jedi Outcast games, or Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Order. And those are okay games, but I also kind of see what the fans are always complaining about on certain aspects. And I have to say, like, Lucasfilm, for some reason, they only care about Star Wars. Like, Disney buys Lucasfilm, and the first thing they do is start production on a bunch of Star Wars projects. Nothing for Indy. Nothing for Indiana Jones. It's like, do you guys forget that you have Indiana Jones? Why isn't there a game? Why isn't there another movie as long as Harrison Ford is still alive and kicking? You know what I'm saying? But back then, LucasArts, which was a subsidiary, like a small group offshoot from the larger Lucasfilm, they understood that in order to bring Indy to life, there was certain things that you would need to have. You would need, for instance, a whip. Yeah. You need the whip to cross chasms. You also need the whip to whip people. And the thing about that whip is it better damn well sound like the whip in the movies, which is always like just the most amazing noise you've ever heard, just incredibly loud. And they did. They went into the sound archives at Lucasfilm. They pulled all the samples out that they would have used in in a movie. So it sounds like an indie game. The story tries, but the voice acting lets you down. The guy who plays Harrison Ford here doesn't sound anything like Harrison Ford. Like I looked at a bunch of old reviews of this game, and they were like, "Oh, he sounds like Harrison Ford." No, he doesn't. But that's okay. Harrison Ford's expensive, right? We don't put him in a video game necessarily. What else do you need in order to make it feel like a good indie game? Well, you need to have some fisticuffs, right? In fact, most of the fighting that he's going to be doing should be like fist fighting, because that's indie. And you're going to have some realistic weapons. And those two are going to have to sound like they come straight from an indie film. So what I'm saying is that LucasArts really, really keyed in on, okay, how do we make the player feel like Indiana Jones? And I think for the most part they were successful. This game doesn't hold up very well. The camera is always a mess. It's always showing what you don't want. And movement is a mess. There's a lot of platforming in this game. Too much platforming. Agreed. Indy does do some real like platforming type stuff in the movies, but it's mostly platforms. And he's just not precise enough. Wielding him as you would a character from a dedicated platformer. It's no comparison. He overshoots his mark when he jumps. He undershoots it. You're never really pointing in the right direction. It can be a bit of a mess. So it can be a little frustrating, but by no means is it unplayable. Like I said, LucasArts, because they were owned by George Lucas himself, and began under his directive, they always really cared about the authenticity of the experience. And honestly, for this new indie game that they're developing, they really should look at this thing, Emperor's Tomb here. It's 17 years old. and you have definitely played better platformer or third-person action games. Even from that era, there are better ones, but this is a rare one. And like I said, authenticity is kind of the key to it. So here's what I would say about Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Groove. How the Emperor got his groove back. Indiana Jones 7. Here's what I would say about it. If you're looking for something that is authentic to indie, that is retro, because you don't have any other choices. This is really the only really great example of an Indiana Jones game. Then look no further than this game, because it's going to have everything you want. It's not a perfect mixture, a little bit too video gamey at times, if you can believe that. As far as like the choices that they make for being able to scale buildings, or I don't know, they almost got it. They almost nailed it with this game. I think you should play it. I think you should. Retro Roundup, play it. But here's what's something that you should do. You should go on Amazon.com or .internation here and buy this book, which I have heard is exceptional.
I have heard it too.
I am not biased.
Are you sure?